thinking about what's mine, nothing to deny. Who's that other guy? Oh, you're wasting my time. All these crazy fears that ends with bloody tears. Oh baby, we keep prepping long nights, rock your body whole life.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, depending where you are connected. That is at present all around the world. Welcome to this webinar about digital transformation and trends in the sport industry. My name is Marisa Sainz. I'm in charge of the Real Madrid Graduate School. Before introducing you the two great speakers that we have today, let me just start with you a little view about what is the Real Madrid School. We started in the 2006 with the link between Real Madrid and the Universidad Europea. Universidad Europea has the purpose to be closer to the industry, to really teach to the best professionals. And Real Madrid has the necessity to give back to the society part of the love that they receive. And they decide that education is a very good way to improve and to improve not just the society but also the sport industry. We started with this program with the MBA in sports management. Now we have more than 20 programs in everything related with sports, from sport physiotherapy, nutrition, psychology, marketing. The MBA is the big one. We have close to 200 students every year in the different versions, online, campus-based, English and Spanish. 73% of our students are from abroad. One good example is this webinar that we are doing today. Our alumni are close to 11,000 in almost every single country, also with a lot of diversity. And also our professors, the main distinction that they have is that all of them are professionals in the sport field, and of course also some of them from Real Madrid. The commitment of the club is very high. Mr. Emilio Butragueño is the director of the school. We also have the White Week, that is a very intensive week with all the managers of Real Madrid. Some of our students have internships in the club. The faculty, big part of the faculty are also professionals and executives from the club. And one good example is also that we have one co-director in each one of the programs. Today, we have the two directors of this program from Universidad Europea. You will have Pablo Burillo. He has been related with sports all his life, from the graduate degree that he has done in physical activity, but later the master in sports management, but also the PhD also related with this field. He is also a consultant, but is the match director for La Liga, used to be a professional referee. Then I think all his life has been involved with sports and every day more and more. And we are very, very happy to have here with us, sharing his experience, to Michael Sutherland. Sorry for my pronunciation in your last name, Michael. I suppose one day I will learn. Not easy. Michael is the Chief of Transformation Officer at Real Madrid. That means that he's in charge of the digital transformation of the club, but also the business in the new stadium that you should know that is really is going to have a great impact in the construction of new stadiums, and also all the strategies related with the commercial growth for the present and the future of the club. His department includes areas like information and technology, digital strategy, marketing, and insight and business intelligence. Almost nothing, no? Very few things, really important, key things for a corporation like Real Madrid. He has close to 70 professionals under his support. Used to have a career in the States, but he's from Australia, if I'm right. But New Zealand, come on. Sorry for that. New Zealand, sorry, and I love New Zealand. I have been there. I think we talk about that. He used to work in Silicon Valley in a lot of companies, like an executive in emerging technologies, with HP, in virtual reality, artificial intelligence, like an angel investor. He's very young, but has all this experience, and now is like in the perfect storm in this moment, in transformation and in Real Madrid. Welcome. Thank you very much for your time, that I know that is complicated to find a little moment to share with our students. I hope that you will enjoy. Pablo is going to do some of the questions, but most of the questions can come from your side. I hope that you will enjoy what I'm going to do. Thank you very much, you both.
Thank you, Marisa. Well, thank you, Michael, to come to these master classes. As all of you can see at our YouTube chat, we are ready to have this your question. So I invite you to participate in this event, because this is the most important thing: the participation of you in these master classes to ask Michael whatever. But let me start first with the discussion topic, okay, of this masterclass. Why undertake the digital transformation in a sport company? I don't have the answer. I think maybe Michael have, but there's no doubt that technology has transformed and will continue to transform businesses across all the industry, not only sports. And even that the digital point of view has radically altering both the customers and experience and the organization. And well, this is my first question for you, Michael. Why undertake this kind of digital transformation, or what are the main strengths and the big difficulties to do that in a sport company?
Well, thank you, first of all, to everyone for joining, and thanks for the opportunity to be part of this. So why embark on digital transformation in a sports club? It's really the same as the question of why embark on any sort of digital transformation in general. And I often don't even talk about it being digital transformation. It's really about the ability to continually adapt and change to the changes that are happening all around us. And I mean, this is the one thing that is really universal across not just sports, but all sorts of industries, is the pace of change. So change is happening faster and faster and faster every day. And, you know, a lot of this is really coming from the continual innovation of technology and different technologies that are coming to the market. It's also because of these technologies that customers have expectations have changed. I think the level of expectation that they have from their brands, their favorite companies, and their favorite sports clubs has increased as a result. And so really what transformation is about is it's a very holistic approach. It's about looking at how do we continue to stay relevant when the world around us is constantly changing. And that's really, really important in the sports industry in particular, because as we've seen just recently, there's been some massive changes that have happened in the sports industry that have had a big impact. And it's important to be able to be agile enough to adapt to those, to make sure that you have the right tools and structure in place. It's even about having a culture that can work collaboratively, even remotely these days, and be able to find solutions quickly and adapt to changes as they happen. And it's also about being able to apply these new changes that are happening in the market in a way that provides you better experience for your fans, for your customers, for your members. And so it's a very holistic approach. It's not really something that is about technology. It's really, we look at it in a large part from both a cultural, organizational standpoint, a fan and customer standpoint, and also for Real Madrid, it's about really looking at the future. It's about looking at the next 10 years, the next 20 years, and saying, you know, what do we need to do as a sports club to not just stay relevant, but to continue to lead in this industry. And it's there's no question about it. The club, like all clubs, will have to change over the coming years in order to continue to engage fans and continue to stay relevant, and obviously to continue winning, because this is also very tied not just to the commercial growth of the organization, but it is tied to how we adapt and how we continue to be able to stay on top from a sports standpoint. So it's all very very tied together.
Yeah. I completely agree. You know, talking about this fan experience, okay, as you said, how can the fan experience be improved in this moment? You know that in these moments, many sports are played with closed doors, or very small number of spectators and extreme safety measure. How can we improve this fun experience?
Well, I think we've seen a number of different things happen, particularly during kind of the worst moments of the COVID period. Particularly during March and April, where we were really thrown into quite a difficult moment, to be honest. I mean, we were suddenly in a mode where everyone was locked, more or less stuck inside their homes. We suddenly found ourselves without being able to play even matches at that time. And, we really had to look at it as a completely new challenge to solve. It really impacted all different aspects of the business. So when we had no matches at all, we had to quickly adapt to maintaining, for us, our social media presence, our brand, our fan engagement online is really important for us. And all of a sudden, most of the content that we rely on from our matches was gone. So we really had to completely reinvent our content model in terms of what type of content could we produce, and we had to get quite creative around it, and it actually opened up new opportunities and really showed like some really interesting new approaches. In some cases, things that we had wanted to try previously, but COVID actually gave us the opportunity to do it. So we were able to look at more creative concepts that focused around particularly integrating with the players' lifestyles. We created, in fact, during COVID, we launched the first sort of official club Twitch channel. And so it was sort of in a moment of absolute chaos and uncertainty, actually ended up being a moment of innovation. And we've seen really, really great results with that. And it also enabled us to create new content models. We developed an esports football kind of crossover where we actually had our professional football athletes playing FIFA 20 against each other, and it created some really, really interesting, engaging moments. But now that we've got the matches going, it's opened up new opportunities. You've obviously seen a variety of different approaches to how to kind of keep that atmosphere alive in the live match, and we've even been experimenting with some approaches that you wouldn't have even seen actually yet on live television, and where we're actually able to simulate entire stadiums, and that actually even opens up some really, really fun and interesting opportunities around kind of augmented reality type viewing experiences. But one of the big factors in this area is actually it's one of the ongoing kind of important considerations in sports in general, is the sort of the relationship between the rights holders and the non-rights holders, but the participants in the ecosystem. So it may not actually be widely known, but in our case, for example, the sports clubs don't own the rights of the match content. And so in some cases it's about trying to, work with the league to find solutions where the league is the rights holder. And in some cases it comes down to things that the club can do themselves.
No, that does make sense. The rights at the end, well, is the broadcasting is one of the main things for the incomes of the entities. And well, here in Europe, we are always thinking about, we are thinking about how the Americans, because the American sport industry is our ideal, no? So what should European clubs, maybe football clubs or soccer clubs, learn from other industries like the NBA, the NFL? Because, well, we think that they started first. What should we learn?
Well, it's an interesting question, isn't it? Because in many aspects, a European football is actually has a much larger presence, much larger following than North American sports. So it is funny in some ways that we maybe look to them to take the lead. However, I think one of the things that is really important to consider and remember is the structure of the leagues is different, and so the NBA is sort of an entity in its own right that has a lot more control over the league and the teams. And so it does give them some permission to do things that we haven't yet seen in Europe. And I think that in general, we do see maybe a more aggressive approach to innovation from some of the North American leagues, going earlier into over-the-top content distribution, looking at new delivery models for viewing. And I think in some ways it's made perhaps a little bit easier because of the model that they use there for the league structure. But I think, those are all things that we pay attention to, and we're actually we speak with the NBA, we speak with the NFL, we even speak with the Major League Soccer teams. It's a very connected industry, but I think that there's perhaps a little bit more of an aggressive approach to innovation, which I think is also partly a cultural thing as well. And I think you'll see that depends a little bit on where the individual teams are as well. Obviously, California-based teams, they're a lot closer to the kind of the Silicon Valley mentality, and so I think you'll typically see, maybe more pushing the boundaries a little bit more, coming maybe from some of those teams than you might see from other areas. So it's a little bit of a cultural thing as well.
Yeah. No, it's dependent on the culture at the end. You see. Well, we have here a fair question. Sorry if I cannot pronounce well the name. Abish Sharma asks you, what do you think about OTT giants like Netflix, Amazon Prime, etc., releasing documentaries, for example, All or Nothing, Six Dreams,
Yes.
Is bringing a new chance or creating a new industry at all?
I think it's definitely bringing about a lot of change. So it's, with some of the documentaries that have been released recently, it's obviously brought a lot of visibility to sports documentary content. Of course, the Michael Jordan documentary, I think almost everyone ended up watching it. And these platforms are where viewers are, right? So, I mean, we've moved away from the cable subscriptions in many cases. And in many cases, sports are sort of the final bastion for cable companies. And that's a model that is potentially ready for disruption. And it will be interesting to see, whether some of these OTT platforms go more aggressively into rights holding. We've already seen Facebook and Amazon starting to explore being rights holders for different sports. So as we see more sports move across, I think they're kind of testing the water a little bit. But it's also, these are major platforms and they're always looking for new content. And on our side, there's an interesting dynamic, because as you see more and more, particularly larger teams, putting more focus on trying to develop their brand, particularly internationally, content is a key delivery model for that. So there's definitely a significant interest from both the clubs, but also the players, which is a very interesting dynamic that's happening, looking to get more content onto these platforms. And the player dynamic is an interesting one. That's actually a major trend that I'm sort of seeing in the industry is, the what would you want to call it, the sort of players becoming celebrities. And it's not something that's completely new, but players really have the ability to create their own fan platforms. That does change the dynamic a lot about how content is created and distributed. And so you're seeing players individually get represented by personal branding agencies who are now developing new content with companies like Netflix and Amazon. And of course, clubs are doing the same thing. So we're also obviously talking to all of these big industry players as well. And so, there is a bit of a race on. It's an interesting model, and it'll be interesting to see where it kind of goes. But content is only getting bigger and bigger. The need for content is getting more and more every day. As a club, even as an individual player, there's always a hunger for more and more content. And the better quality content you can produce, the more you increase obviously that following. And so these big platforms are becoming an interesting destination for creating content on.
Yeah, absolutely. They are focused on the real life, and this is pretty new for the audience. Okay, and so are the new digital trends going to change the way that we consume sport? What do you think?
I think it absolutely will, and it already has. What are some of the trends that are really happening though? So, because like I said before, a lot of this comes down to the rights holders. So, the rights model ends up impacting a lot. So, in terms of which geographies we can really focus on. So, I mean, we have fans all around the world. But certain markets are really easier for us to access, and a lot of that is to do with how much access the fans in that country have to the content, and that depends a lot on where the rights have been made available. And again, it's really the rights holders that have most of the control over how that content is distributed. So we're seeing, obviously, in North American sports in particular, a big move following the trends that we're seeing in other areas of moving to OTT platforms. So, from a fan's standpoint, people are consuming more and more content through OTT platforms, through streaming services, and it's natural that they would want to be able to consume their sports through streaming services and OTT. So, I think that's something that will happen eventually. It's just really a question of when, and it's also a question of money, honestly. These rights packages are worth billions and billions of dollars, and so it's a big disruption to the industry to move to these streaming platforms. So I think from a customer standpoint, there's so much sort of force moving us in that direction, but there's a lot of other trends that are happening as well around the need for more bite-sized consumption. One of the segments of fans that we identify with is what we sort of refer to as our digital dynamos, and these are typically younger fans, but they're involved in a lot of different sports. They might even be involved in esports, and they're not necessarily looking for the full 90-minute match. They're kind of looking to get access to the highlights. They want the replays. And so there's opportunities for new delivery models, new business models, new subscription models, even around that. And then, some of the other trends that we've seen happen, even just because of COVID, are, things like watch parties. So being able to virtually join friends to watch a match through something similar to, a Zoom hangout. And, some of these trends are interesting to track because there are so many different things happening that we as a club need to stay close to what's happening so we can start to understand whether it's something we need to be actively moving on or whether it's something that's more of a passing trend.
Yeah. And talking about conventional consumers and the conventional way to consume or to generate incomes is the stadium. Okay, so we have here some question about the stadium, and Ismael Lopez Medel says that, can you talk about the digital plan or the digital experience in the new Santiago Bernabéu Stadium? Well, for those who didn't know, the Santiago Bernabéu Stadium is under renovation, and I think it's going to be could be the best stadium, football stadium all over the world. And how is going to be this digital experience of the fan at this new Santiago Bernabéu Stadium?
Well, I'd love to. It'd be great if I could ask back. I'm interested to know when is it Ismael Lopez Medel asked, is it going to be similar to the SoFi Stadium plans? I'm interested to know in specifically what aspects of the SoFi Stadium, because the reality is we're actually in the middle of defining the digital experience for the new stadium, which is due to be launched around sort of end of 22, 23. So we're in the middle of that. It's a really exciting process, obviously. But some of the major trends, obviously, that they're almost expected now. We need to think about the entire customer journey through the stadium. So there's different aspects of that experience we need to consider. There's obviously the match day experience. So what happens on the match day? That's everything from how you obtain your tickets to the match, how you get to the stadium, how you access the stadium, how do you find your seat, how do you access our food and beverage services, what is the show that you get to see in the stadium before the match, after the match, halftime show. With the new stadium, we have much more screen real estate. We have a halo similar to the SoFi Stadium, in fact. So we have a whole new world of content that we need to be able to produce to really utilize that new digital real estate. So there's many different aspects. Some of the major trends that we're obviously looking at are things like seamlessness and contactlessness. So to be able to create a completely contactless stadium. So what does that mean? Well, it means really digitalizing everything. It means moving from paper-based tickets to fully digital. So in the same way that once upon a time you might have received your boarding pass after waiting in line at the check-in counter and going through all of that process. Now you simply check in online, you get your boarding pass in your digital wallet in your phone, and you just tap it via NFC and you can go straight through. And so these sorts of seamless contactless experiences they're not only better experience for the fan, but obviously in today's society with COVID, they're becoming more and more essential. We need to be able to provide a contactless environment so that we can eliminate the spread of things like COVID. So being able to create that contactless experience by leveraging technologies like NFC, your digital wallet, being able to integrate that into the stadium access, into the food and beverage service, into our retail experience so that you can, for example, go into our retail store and potentially just tap your phone on an article of clothing and be able to check it out right there on your phone without even needing to go to the counter. Or the same thing, being able to pay via your phone from the table. And then, of course, I mentioned the match day experience. There's a whole range of things that we're looking at doing there to really make that just an amazing experience when you're at the stadium, and really make a whole day of it if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and well, at the end, the objective of the club is to have fun, more fans, and to win. First this is a sport company, so a club, so you need to win, but having more and more fans. So what do you think that needs to be the main objective of a club? To have more fans, to retain those who already are fans, and monetize them, or both objectives, more fans and retain those fans from other industries?
Well, I think you said it. It has to be both. You can never forget about your fans. So your fans are your fans, and you need to treat them with the utmost respect and really do everything you can for your fans. But it's also interesting to understand the difference between different fans based on geography, based on behaviors. For example, for Real Madrid, the sort of the archetype of fan that we have in Real Madrid is very, very different than someone that is perhaps living in India or in North America. And their journey to becoming a fan is very different. So the way that we, for a fan in India, we may actually need to do more work to help them to become a fan of Real Madrid. Whereas someone that lives in Madrid is more likely to be either born into a family that supports Real Madrid, and so it's a very different dynamic from that respect. But we need to understand exactly what the motivators, what the needs are of each of these different types of fans, and make sure that we're doing everything that we can to retain them. And then we need to always be looking for growing our audience. It's something that's constantly changing. And it's important for our commercial growth, particularly from an international standpoint. So we need to win trophies. It's something that's incredibly important to Real Madrid. how do we win trophies? Well, we need to keep growing as a business. It's an expensive business, unfortunately, and so we need to have a strong commercial business. And part of that is making sure that our brand is not just recognized, but really cherished and sought after, and is a brand and a club that people love and talk about with their friends, and attract new fans to discover Real Madrid. So it's really both. We have to both look at how we engage new fans, but also we need to make sure that we keep our existing fans engaged with us as well.
Yeah. Well, another question from Massimiliano Pozarski. He said, good afternoon, Michael. Do you think that, well, this is a great topic, okay? Do you think that nowadays big clubs must develop an e-sport department instead of outsourcing it? Because the tremendous growth that the sector is having. E-sport department.
I mean, it's a great question. There's no doubt about it, and I think it's a popular question. It's one that often comes up. I think there's no hard and fast rule. There's no rule that says that big clubs or small clubs should develop an esports department. I think it really depends on what the objectives of the club are. In some cases, it may be that the club specifically really wants to only focus on football. And in that case, there's an option to look at expanding into esports. For other clubs, it will be something that is part of who they want to be, and they want to embrace a wider variety of sports. And esports is definitely it is a sport. It requires an investment. It requires athlete development. And so it's something that shouldn't be sort of taken lightly either. Mm-hmm. So it's something that we obviously think about a lot. We look at it from the perspective of what can we really bring to the esports world that we're going to be competing in. We don't take these sorts of decisions sort of lightly, because it's important to us that it becomes part of our identity, and so we want to know that we're doing it for the right reasons. And but there's no question about it. Esports is a big and growing industry, and it's a serious sporting industry. So it's something that we think about a lot, and I think most teams are thinking about a lot. It also carries some complications. There's some things that you probably don't think about in esports that are challenging for clubs. Quite frankly, there's always the aspect of which esports are the right esports that are aligned with the club's values and the club's brand. So, for example, is something like a Call of Duty well aligned with the club's brand or where they want to position the brand? Is League of Legends? Is Dota 2? Is Rocket League? So there's an element of making sure that there's brand alignment, and then there's also even decisions to be made in terms of, if you consider something like FIFA. The model itself actually means that, for example, a Real Madrid FIFA 20 team could actually have members of Barcelona playing in that virtual team. There's nothing to really stop that. And so that's again something that is a decision that each club needs to take, whether that's something they feel comfortable with. So there's lots of different aspects to it, but there's no question about it. It's a really important thing to be considering.
Yeah. And in this topic, David Alcantara asks, all is evolving so quickly, and e-games are getting so close to reality. Do you think the sport entities will invest in the e-sport industry as much as they are doing now in their traditional teams?
Well, again, I think it depends a lot on what the objectives of each of the clubs are. But, the level of investment is obviously going to be relative to the return on that investment. So as it stands today, the esports industry is growing quite quickly. But if you look at it compared to the value of football industry, for example, it's still very, very, very small. So that's not to say that you should ignore it, but it does simply mean that the level of investment needs to be proportional to the return on that investment. So I think sports clubs will invest to the right amount in esports to be competitive in this space, but it may not be at the same level yet to where the football investment is. But that could change. That could change in time to come as the esports industry grows, and obviously the level of investment will grow as that return can be seen as well.
Yeah. Okay. Here a question from a current student from our Executive MBA in Sport Management, Tom Ford. He said you came to Real Madrid just a few years ago, I think 2 years ago. What was Real Madrid digital environment like when you arrived? What were your biggest challenges?
Well, I arrived about a year ago, or just a bit over a year ago. Sorry?
No, I think the current situation is a big challenge.
Yeah, so I mean, let's just say that having COVID land in my first year with the club was represented quite a big challenge in its own right. But it's been a good challenge to deal with. Obviously, the COVID situation itself is not a great situation to have, but as I said before, it's actually opened up some interesting opportunities. No, the club. I mean, there's when I entered the club, I would say that we as a sports club are relatively sophisticated in many ways compared to other clubs. And I mean, part of that is obviously the size of the club. We have access to more resources than other clubs potentially. But we do have some very sophisticated infrastructure. And to be honest, one of the biggest challenges is just is sort of really aligning the overall culture to make use of that infrastructure. So we have developed data lake infrastructure. We have a comprehensive data platform. And, one of the challenges is just to make sure that we're using that data in a way that allows us to bring more value to our fans and our customers. And so connecting that infrastructure into the business areas is actually one of the biggest challenges for transformation, is just to make sure that you have that chain all the way through. And that requires, it can require sometimes changes in the way that we operate businesses. And so these are typically more cultural and organizational challenges than they are about technology in that respect. So it's a very, very collaborative process. It's a process where although I have sort of a direct responsibility for our kind of marketing, technology, business intelligence areas, it's really about bringing those skill sets and that experience and knowledge in a way that we can help interact with the different business units and help them to grow their businesses by using all those resources and using that experience and that infrastructure. And that's really at the heart of what a lot of the transformation is about.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we have another question from current student in this MBA in Sport Management online, and is Mary Brown. Why doing an MBA program could be good for a professional career, or what are the best skills that you need in this sport industry to be hired in a sport company as Real Madrid, for example?
Well, I mean, doing an MBA, typically you're maybe you're coming from a sector and you're doing an MBA in order to, a lot of people do an MBA to try and transition into another sector. So, the MBA itself obviously gives you a great set of skill sets and tools and frameworks that you can utilize in a commercial environment. And one of the things that you'll potentially find in the sporting world is that there's a variety of different levels of sort of commercial maturity, and that's part of the fact of just that sports clubs have grown out of being, they're now commercial organizations that have grown out of sports clubs. So it's quite a unique environment. It's very different to a typical company, and you'll see some of the interesting uniqueness of that play out in different aspects. And so different clubs, depending on the size, will have different levels of sort of commercial maturity. And so being able to bring some of those professional skill sets and those professional approaches to managing business through an MBA program is very important right now in a lot of clubs, as most clubs are looking to continually mature their commercial business, because they need to be able to grow their commercial business. They need to be able to manage their commercial business. And the model for the commercial side of clubs is also changing at the moment as well. We've seen huge growth in the industry as commercial rights have been quite often outsourced to third parties to manage. So, for example, you'll often see that clubs have a licensing or retail business that they've outsourced to another entity to manage that. And now you're starting to see a trend where clubs are saying, hang on a sec, maybe we want to actually bring that business back in-house and we want to manage that ourselves. And so that requires, professional business people to be able to help manage those businesses. So I think it's a great time to be bringing an MBA skill set into an organization. And then the other piece I would say is typically, people are coming from maybe a different industry. I mean, maybe you're coming from a sports industry and doing an MBA and trying to move up in the world in sports, or maybe you're coming from a different industry and transitioning into sports. And if so, it's good to be able to understand what that unique skill set is that you're bringing, and understand how you can bring that unique value that you're carrying into the organization when you're getting there.
Yeah. And here we have some related questions. For example, Mattia, I agree with Mattia that he says that digital transformation is as much about people as it is about technology. And how does Real Madrid invest in growing the skills and competencies of its people to face current future challenge? And that means how you are doing these kind of things with your people.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would completely agree with your statement about that it's as much about people as it is about technology, and we have sort of 5 key pillars of what we call our focus areas in our transformation, and one of those pillars is organizational fitness, and it's really around people. It's really around culture and around people, and so we definitely see people as a key part of how we transform the business. I mean, there's a variety of different ways. Obviously, we bring in quite a few interns into the organization, and so we've got a number of people in my team, in fact, who are former interns. And so they're now, we're looking at bringing them into new roles, developing new roles around them. And so that's a great opportunity to sort of get into the club and learn about different ways of growing inside the sports industry. But, we've just run a club-wide a program where we're working, where we're developing sort of new educational initiatives to increase skill levels around digital transformation related skill sets. So making sure that people have a kind of a common language, but are also understanding how to apply that into their own areas. We're looking at running we're actually running individual workshops at the moment with different business areas as well, kind of introducing new techniques like design thinking, and help people to learn about new ways of approaching the business. And then we also look at ways that we can recognize achievement and accountability through providing access to professional training resources and things like that. And of course, we're always looking at trying to bring in new talent into the organization. A big focus of mine is also making sure that we have the right skill sets in the right places. And so as things are changing, new skill sets are required that weren't previously required. And so we need to take a decision of, do we have someone in the team that can move into that role and start to learn that new skill set, or do we need to look outside the club to bring new talent in? And obviously bringing new talent in is also a great way of bringing new ideas and new approaches into the club as well. But couldn't agree more. It's absolutely about the people. It's in fact, I think technology is really one of the last factors. I would say it's about people, it's about your fans, and then it's about understanding how can we apply technology to solve problems and find new solutions.
Yeah, even in the performance, because here we have a question from Maria. Does Real Madrid have planned to use technology to optimize their training, incoming players on-field performance? Would an MBA be able to work in this area?
Well, so the first part is does Real Madrid have plans to use tech to optimize the training? Well, we absolutely do, and we already do. So we do use a variety of different technologies, both in terms of sensor technology to measure all sorts of different things. We have a lot of data that comes from our training sessions, from wearable sensors that the players use to video analysis. We have scouting analysis and sort of big data reports that we can use to generate insights on scouting. So we use a lot of technology and a lot of data already in sort of improving our sports performance, and that's actually a big area of focus for us. We want to be seen as really the leader in sports performance and athlete development, because it's something that we really excel at. From the academy, we bring people from very, very young ages, and we bring them all the way through right into the first team. So it's a big piece of what Real Madrid does. In terms of could an MBA work in this area? Yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason why not. What the question would be, like, what would be the area? And I think this is where, as an MBA, it's often helpful to look at your own sort of skill set and like where can I bring unique aspects outside of like bring the knowledge that I obtained in the MBA and combine it with experience that I have in some other area. So if you're, for example, you're coming from an engineering background and you're doing an MBA, that can be a great combination of skill sets to bring into something like a performance environment, where you're able to bring not just a kind of a business and a management focus, but also leveraging sort of a technical focus as well. But that's not to say that only engineers can be working in that area.
Yeah. You said data. So yeah, big data predominates right now. How this department, the big data department, works at Real Madrid? What should be their main goals for the future?
What should be the main cause?
The main goals of the data department to help because there are a lot of data. So sometimes we think that it's not about big data; it's more about small data. Could be.
Yeah. I mean, in the sense of big data, I mean, I think it's not really about the data at all. It's really about what can data tell you? What are the insights that you can actually generate from data? So we one of the traps can actually be to get lost in the data. So if I could prepare a 30-page report of all the different data points and statistics that we collect from a training session, and I can give that report to the coach. But what's he going to do with a 30-page report? I mean, he's not going to read it. What he needs to know is maybe 2 or 3 things that are going to help him in improving the performance of the players. And so a big piece of it is really working with the different stakeholders to understand, like, what are the key questions you're trying to ask or trying to answer, and how can we leverage data insights, or it doesn't always have to be just data insights. Our insights department is also doing qualitative studies where we actually run focus groups. We talk with customers. It's about having a really holistic understanding and being able to generate insights from that help create value and help create the ability to take decisions. So in some cases, it's going to be literally we create a data model. So for things like our ticketing area, there are many different questions that the business area needs to be able to answer. And in many cases, we can actually take the data that we have and develop a model, a machine learning model, to help answer that question. But in other cases, it's a lot more human focused. We go out and we talk to fans, and we understand what their needs are, and we use that information to help improve products and services. So at the end of the day, it's about being able to generate answers to the right questions, and also knowing which questions to ask.
Yeah. Well, we are finishing, so 2 more questions. Sorry, because we cannot ask all the question that you have written. But this is one from Robert, from the current Executive MBA, and from David. Robert said, what is expected of a student when she arrives at Real Madrid after having completed an MBA program? And David says, more or less the same. What are the digital skills you consider more relevant to join a digital team similar to the one you lead?
Yeah, so it really depends. So there's actually two ways that you can answer that question, interestingly enough. One is what is expected of someone when they're joining a club, and I think that it's a slightly different question. One of the things, and I think this is worth thinking, because perhaps some of you may end up going through the program and maybe joining us as an intern. One of the things that's really important to come into a club, and in particular, I think a sports club, is to come in with a level of humility, because there's a very unique set of attributes that I think each club probably uniquely has, and it's very different to a company in many ways. And so it's very important to be able to spend time learning about how the organization works, understanding kind of the unwritten sort of rules of the organization, and then looking at, well, how do I bring my unique skill set? How do I bring the experience that I gained in my MBA in a way that complements that, but still in a way that understands the uniqueness of the organization? So I would say that's actually something that's quite important for people when they join the club. As far as specific skill sets, it really depends on what you're looking to get into. So I mean, when we say digital is it's a bit of a difficult term to sort of really put a box around. Everything nowadays more or less has some digital element to it. I mean, we should really be thinking digitally in almost everything we do. So whether that is how do we provide a better service to our ticketing customers, we should be thinking in a digital world. We live in a digital world. We live in a mobile first world. So we need to be thinking, how do we deliver that service of providing tickets or providing access to the stadium in a world where people are living in their mobile phones, or where they expect to be able to get access to this from the cloud. So, we should be thinking digitally. As far as like the different areas of skill sets, if we look at kind of core skill sets, there's definitely an increase in the need for things like data science and analytics. Product management is something that I think is seeing growth inside organizations as there's a need to deliver more and more digital products and services. So we need more product managers. And that's often a role that I've seen a lot of MBAs come in, either coming from or bringing that sort of skill set. There's also a huge focus, particularly these days, on the growth of the brand. So even though that's not necessarily a digital skill set, it's important to understand how you go about brand development in a digital world. Customer experience is really key. So and that's kind of a product management role in many cases, but understanding what's important from a customer experience standpoint, and that requires a level of understanding about what are the technologies that can help us deliver a leading customer experience. Everything from unification of customer care channels, but also leveraging new technologies that are coming out, like natural language interfaces, being able to create that true one-to-one relationship with a customer. There's no better way than to just make it a conversation. So conversational interfaces are now becoming something that's really, really important for creating that relationship. So, having an understanding of the new technologies that are coming out, but also understanding how to apply them in a business sense. And that's what's going to be, quite important. So it's hard to say sort of specifically individual skill sets from a digital standpoint, but I think those would be some areas that are worth having a think about.
Mm-hmm. No, that's right. To be confident with the client. Yeah. The last question. Okay, you and your team are planning the Real Madrid of the future. So this is a question from Michael Redford from the Executive MBA in Sport Management online, and he said, "Well, thinking in a long term, forgetting the pandemic time." How do you imagine the Real Madrid or the professional soccer industry within 10 years, 15 years?
Well, that's a great question to ask. There's a lot of things that could impact where the industry goes in the next 10 to 15 years. Obviously, things like league structure are going to have a huge impact. The delivery models are going to have an impact. But I think one thing that is fairly certain is that the growth of sports is going to continue. So, clubs like Real Madrid, no one really knows exactly which clubs they're going to be, of course, but there will always be the growth of new clubs. And so if there's going to be that commercial growth of clubs, those revenues need to come from somewhere. And even with the development of new stadiums, that only gives a certain level of growth. So when you start to get beyond that, what you're starting to see are more commercial development around the brand. And you're starting to see that now from certain clubs. So I think you'll see, a bigger international presence. You might see larger retail and merchandising presences. A big focus on kind of globalization and really looking at how to tap into that international fan base, which is something that is talked about a lot, but is still not really completely mature. There's not really any clubs yet that have fully embrace the full international audience of sports, because it's not an easy thing, but it requires a combination of brand development, retail and merchandising development, but really a continued growth around the commercial. So I think we'll see bigger and bigger clubs, and I think the other dynamics that are going to have a big impact on that are really around the rights models, the league structures. If we end up seeing new league structures, those are going to have huge impacts on the sport. Probably we'll see a greater integration of esports. I think that's a likely scenario, and obviously the development of the esports industry is going to have some impact on that as well. So there's some big moves that will definitely happen, but you're going to see continued commercial growth, and you're going to see Real Madrid stay at the top of that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Michael. Well, time is over. This was a great masterclass for you. So thank you for sharing your time with all of us. Thank you. It's been a real honor to conduct this interview. I think we have all learned a lot. And I think we are more prepared for the new digital world that is coming. To all the participants at YouTube, our students, thank you too. I hope to see you again soon, very, very soon, at some events at Real Madrid Graduate School, or maybe at our master's programs like the Executive MBA in Sport Management. Also the Spanish group, the MBA en Dirección de Entidades Deportivas, 100% online. Thank you for being here, and that's all. Okay. If you need more information, you can see all the links from our admission department. And well, for all of you, have a good day, afternoon or evening. Depends where you are. Thank you, Michael, again, and see you soon.
Thank you, Pablo. Thanks everyone for joining.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Thinking about what's mine, nothing to deny. Who's that other guy? Oh, you're wasting my time. All these crazy fears that ends with bloody tears. Oh baby, we keep prepping long nights. Rock your body whole life. Don't bother the world side. Twerk it like a Vegas stripper, darling, money stage mine. Billions in the cage fight. Fuck their thoughts and get high. And get high. It's all about the mind. We'll be doing fine. Living on the edge sometimes, alright. Fame is how we ride. Life is all about time. Feeling like the world is beyond our sight. It's all about the mind. We'll be doing fine. Alright. It's alright. It's how we ride. It's never getting older. I got all the time, would you pour some wine for me? Smile for me, and not grind on me, yeah. We keep prepping long nights, rock your body whole life. Don't bother the world side, twerk it like a Vegas stripper, dollar money stage mine. Billions in a cage fight, fuck that thoughts and get high, and get high. It's all about the mind, we'll be doing fine. Living on the edge, sometimes alright. Fame is how we ride, life is all about time. Feeling like the world is beyond our sight. It's all about the mind, we'll be doing fine. Fine, it's alright. It's how we ride, feeling like the world is beyond our sight. It's your mind, your thoughts, your life. So don't you bother the worst knife. We're all the same, you don't have to explain, no. Just stay in your lane. It's all about the mind.